Hello, my name is Christopher Evans, and this video is a guided walkthrough of my Learning Design and Technology e-portfolio for the University of South Florida. This website represents the culmination of my graduate coursework in the Master of Science in Learning Design and Technology program. The portfolio is designed to demonstrate my instructional design knowledge, technical skills, and alignment with the AECT standards. On the home screen, I begin by clearly identifying my academic status and areas of specialization. I'm an MS candidate in learning design and technology with concentrations in big data and learning analytics and game based learning and analytics, as well as a graduate certificate in web design. This information establishes the lens through which the rest of the portfolio should be viewed. My work emphasizes evidence based instructional design, learner experience, ethical data use, and thoughtful integration of technology. The home page is intentionally minimal. Rather than presenting artifacts immediately, it provides context for who I am as a learning designer and how my academic training informs the work you'll see throughout the site. From here, the navigation allows viewers to move into the resume, the video presentation, the AECT standards, and my professional reflection. I'll begin by moving into the AECT standards section where each artifact is presented and explained individually in relation to specific standards and competencies. This section of the portfolio presents the AECT standards that frame all of the work included in this site. The AECT standards provide a comprehensive structure for evaluating professional practice in instructional design and educational technology. They emphasize not only the creation of instructional materials, but also pedagogy, learning environments, professional responsibility, and research informed inquiry. Standard 1 focuses on content knowledge and the ability to create, use, assess, and manage instructional technologies. This includes creating instructional materials, selecting appropriate tools, evaluating their effectiveness, and managing instructional processes. Standard 2 emphasizes content pedagogy. It addresses how leveraging theory and pedagogical knowledge inform instructional design, implementation, evaluation, and ethical decision making. Standard 3 focuses on learning environments, including designing and improving environments that support engagement, learner support, data informed decision making, and effective management of resources. Standard 4 addresses professional knowledge and skills such as collaboration, leadership, reflection, assessment of professional practice, and ethical behavior. Finally, Standard 5 emphasizes research and inquiry, including theoretical foundations, research methods, and the use of formal inquiry to assess instructional processes and outcomes. Each of these standards is represented in this portfolio through specific artifacts. For each standard, I selected assignments that best demonstrate my knowledge, skills, and decision making as an instructional designer. I'll now begin with AECT Standard 1 and discuss the first artifact aligned to that standard. AECT Standard 1 focuses on content knowledge, the ability to create, use, assess, and manage instructional materials and technologies. I've selected 3 artifacts for this standard. Each one demonstrates content knowledge in a different instructional context: interactive e-learning, data visualizations, and educational game design. Artifact 1 is an interactive e-learning lesson developed in Adobe Captivate, where I served as the sole creator. This artifact demonstrates my ability to translate instructional intent into a fully functional learning environment. Design decisions included sequencing content, building purposeful interactions, and integrating feedback so the lesson functions as a cohesive system rather than as a static presentation. Beyond authoring, this project requires publishing and deploying the lesson through web hosting, which reflects real world implementation considerations, how learners actually access instructional materials. This artifact supports AECT Standard 1.1, creating, and 1.2, using, by showing how instructional technologies are selected, applied, and delivered in an authentic learning context. Artifact 2 is a data visualization project completed for a data visualization and education course where I served as sole author and analyst. This artifact demonstrates content knowledge through the use of authentic datasets, data cleaning processes, and visualization tools such as Power BI and ArcGIS. My design decisions focused on translating complex data into interpretable visual representations while evaluating the effectiveness of different visualization approaches. This artifact aligns strongly with AECT Standard 1.2 using and 1.3 assessing and evaluating, as it required both the application of technological tools and critical evaluation of how well those tools supported instructional understanding. Artifact 3 is a final game design project titled A Formidable Journey to Market, where I served as a designer. This artifact represents a comprehensive application of content knowledge across instructional design, game mechanics, and learner experience design. The game was intentionally structured as a learning environment rather than entertainment alone. Design choices included branching narratives, feedback systems, and resource constraints to support learning objectives through experiential interaction. This project demonstrates AECT Standard 1.1 creating and 1.4 managing, as it required coordinating instructional content, technical systems, playtesting, and iterative refinement to produce a cohesive learning experience. Together, these three artifacts demonstrate how I applied content knowledge across multiple instructional formats. Next, I'll move into AECT Standard 2, which focuses on content pedagogy and instructional decision making. Now that I've walked through how my work demonstrates content knowledge under AECT Standard 1, I want to shift focus to AECT Standard 2, content pedagogy. This standard centers on how learning theory, instructional intent, and assessment alignment shape what learners are asked to do, not just what they see. The first artifact under Standard 2 is my behavioral performance objective assignment from problems and instructional design. This artifact demonstrates my ability to translate instructional intent into clear, measurable learning outcomes. Rather than relying on vague goals, I structured objectives using observable behaviors, defined conditions, and performance criterion. What this artifact shows is my grounding in instructional theory, specifically Bloom's taxonomy and task analysis, and my understanding that pedagogy begins with clarity. If objectives aren't instructionally sound, assessment and learning activities can't meaningfully align. The second artifact is my research paper and recorded presentation on current trends in instructional technology. This project required synthesizing peer-reviewed research, evaluating emerging technologies, and analyzing their pedagogical implications, not just their novelty. What's important here is that I approach technology through a theory-first lens. I examined whether instructional technology supported learning outcomes, learner engagement, and cognitive processing, rather than assuming innovation alone creates value. This artifact demonstrates my ability to evaluate instructional tools within real educational contexts and communicate those findings clearly to professional audiences. Artifact 3 is my digital media and learning final project, a research based analysis of how digital media influences cognition, learning environments, and instructional decision making. Rather than focusing on a single tool, this paper examines when and why digital media should be used, grounding recommendations in constructivist theory, cognitive development research, and learning science literature. This artifact reflects my ability to make pedagogical judgments rooted in research, particularly around learner experience, scaffolding, and instructional alignment. The final artifact for Standard 2 is my formal evaluation of an existing online course using established instructional design quality standards. In this project, I analyzed course structure, assessment transparency, learner interaction, accessibility considerations, and instructional clarity. Rather than offering surface level critique, I identified specific design gaps and explained how those gaps could impact learner performance. This artifact demonstrates my ability to evaluate instruction systematically and ethically, reinforcing my understanding that effective pedagogy is evidence based, not preference based. Together, these artifacts show how I apply learning theory to real instructional decisions, from defining objectives to evaluating full learning environments. Next, I'll move on to AECT Standard 3, where the focus shifts from pedagogy to the design and improvement of learning environments. From content pedagogy, I now move into AECT Standard 3, which focuses on how learning environments are designed, supported, and improved over time. On this page, I present artifacts that demonstrate how I approach learning environments not as static products, but as systems. Systems shaped by data, collaboration, learner support, and iterative refinement. This first artifact is my Predictive Model Initiative project from Predicted Learning Analytics. Here I use longitudinal student performance data to design a predictive analytics model intended to identify at-risk learners early and inform instructional interventions. This artifact aligns strongly with AECT Standard 3.3, using data and research evidence to improve learning environments. Rather than analyzing data retrospectively, this project emphasizes proactive decision making using predictive insights to support instructional planning, targeted interventions, and resource allocation. The learning environment improves because instructional responses are informed by patterns in learner data, not assumptions. The second artifact is a research group summary and reflection from my game-based learning coursework. This artifact demonstrates AECT Standard 3.1 and 3.3 through collaborative design and evidence-based refinement of learning environments. My role focused on research synthesis, reflective analysis, and evaluating how emerging game-based technologies such as text-based games and prototyping tools support learner engagement. What's important here is that the learner environment evolved through collaboration, feedback, and iteration. This artifact shows how environments improve over time when design decisions are informed by research, peer input, and learner-centered evaluation. The third artifact is an educational game concept for an AI-driven learning environment. This artifact aligns most strongly with AECT Standard 3.2, learner support with secondary alignment to 3.4 and 3.5. I designed adaptive learner support mechanisms such as performance monitoring, dynamic feedback, scaffolding, and branching pathways intended to respond to learner needs in real time. While this is a conceptual design rather than a deployed system, it demonstrates intentional planning for how learning environments can support persistence, reduce cognitive load, and provide meaningful feedback. My contribution focused on structuring learner support at the design level, ensuring the environment adapts to learners rather than forcing learners to adapt to the system. Together, these artifacts show my approach to learning environments as dynamic, data informed, and learner centered systems, whether through analytics, collaborative, or adaptive design. My focus is on environments that improve over time and respond meaningfully to learner needs. From here, I moved to AECT Standard 4, which focuses on professional knowledge, collaboration, reflection, and ethical practice. Standard 4 focuses on how I function as a professional learning designer, how I collaborate, reflect, assess my own practice, and act ethically within design teams and data informed contexts. This first artifact documents my participation in collaborative instructional design work. Rather than focusing on a finished product, it captures the professional processes behind design, how teams negotiate scope, divide responsibilities, document decisions, and maintain accountability. This artifact demonstrates my ability to communicate clearly, contribute meaningfully to group planning, and engage in professional collaboration aligned with real world instructional design practices. Professional practice, however, doesn't stop at collaboration, it requires reflection. This reflective artifact demonstrates my ability to critically examine my own learning and professional growth within data and analytics contexts. It focuses on how my understanding and of data ethics, analytical reasoning, and evidence based decision making evolve throughout the course. Rather than summarizing content, the reflection evaluates challenges, limitations, and areas for continued growth, showing reflective practice as a professional skill rather than an academic exercise. The final artifact under the standard brings reflection and collaboration together. This artifact demonstrates my ability to assess professional practice, both my own and others, within a collaborative instructional design project. Through peer evaluation and reflection, I analyze contributions, leadership decisions, and the effectiveness of collaboration. It also reflects ethical professional conduct, including accountability, respectful feedback, and transparency in evaluating group work, skills essential to instructional design in higher education, edtech, and corporate environments. With this professional practice established, I'll now move into Standard 5, which focuses on research, inquiry, and evidence based decision making. From the previous standards focused on professional practice and collaboration, we now move into Standard 5, Research and Inquiry, which highlights how I apply research methods, inquiry processes, and evidence based reasoning to instructional design and educational technology. The first artifact under Standard 5 is my Articulate Rise final project titled, What is Artificial Intelligence? This project represents design based inquiry applied through instructional development. This was a research informed instructional module, not just content delivery. Instructional decisions, such as sequencing, chunking, and examples, were grounded in instructional design theory, learner cognition, and applied inquiry rather than experimentation. This project had me investigate how learners interpret AI concepts and then use scenario based explanations and reflection prompts as informal inquiry tools. This artifact primarily aligns with AECT Standard 5.2 research methods and 5.3 inquiry, as it demonstrates how inquiry can be embedded directly into instructional design decisions, even when informal data collection is not conducted. While this artifact demonstrates inquiry embedded in instructional design practice, the next artifact moves into more traditional educational research. Artifact 2 is my final assessment for Foundations of Educational Research, which demonstrates foundational research literacy and methodological analysis. In it, I analyzed empirical education studies. I evaluated research questions, variables, sampling approaches, and validity and limitations. And it even required interpretation of findings, but not just memorization of concepts. This artifact directly supports AECT Standard 5.1 theoretical foundations with secondary alignment to 5.2 research methods by demonstrating my ability to critically evaluate research designs and apply findings within instructional and policy contexts. Building from foundational research literacy, the final artifact shows how I apply advanced research methods to complex real world educational problems. The third artifact is my final project for AI in education, focused on a plan for an AI enabled early warning system designed to mitigate secondary level attrition. This project integrates empirical literature, predictive analytics, and ethical research practice. In it, I designed a research informed system architecture and a plan for its implementation. This project covers dropout prevention, data governance, and ethical safeguards such as FERPA, bias, and transparency. This artifact primarily aligns with AECT Standard 5.1 Theoretical Foundations and 5.2 Research Methods, with secondary support for 5.4 Ethics and Research Practice, due to its emphasis on ethical data use and responsible AI design. Together, these three artifacts demonstrate my ability to move from instructional inquiry to formal research analysis, and finally, to advance research driven system design grounded in ethical and methodological rigor. With Standard 5 complete, the portfolio now transitions into the final segments, where I reflect on learning across the program and synthesize how these standards collectively shape my professional identity as a learning designer. After walking through the standards and artifacts, this final section focuses on reflection. What I learned through the program and how it shaped my professional identity as a learning designer. Developing this e-portfolio required more than assembling coursework. It required articulating a coherent professional identity shaped by theory, practice, and experience. My transition into instructional design was both professional and personal. While I valued working directly with students, I recognized the need to build a sustainable career rooted in long term impact rather than constant urgency. Throughout the program, I learned to approach emerging technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, not as shortcuts, but as tools that require careful judgment, ethical consideration, and pedagogical grounding. At the core of my design philosophy is the learner's experience. Effective learning must be engaging, coherent, and meaningful, not simply visually polished or technically complex. This portfolio represents the culmination of my growth as a practitioner who is technically fluent, research literate, and deeply reflective. It communicates not only what I can produce, but how I think, how I work, and what I value. My goal is simple: to design learning experiences that respect the learner, honor the craft, and produce outcomes that matter. The final segment we will discuss is my portfolio, and my portfolio is my resume, where I will conclude this presentation. The final section of my e-portfolio is my resume, which consolidates my academic preparation, professional credentials, and applied experience in learning design and instructional technology. My academic background reflects a progression from foundational teaching practice into advanced instructional design and learning analytics. My experience reflects a strong emphasis on instructional design, educational technology integration, learning analytics, and data informed decision making. The skills listed here align directly with the artifacts presented throughout this portfolio, including instructional design documentation, evaluation, learning analytics, research synthesis, and ethical design practice. This resume serves as a concise professional snapshot, connecting my academic preparation, practical experience, and design philosophy into a single accessible reference. Thank you for taking the time to review my e-portfolio.